could be one joint or it could be multiple joints, right? And so it's how much we can bend. What's the opposite of flexibility? Stability, right? And so we're either flexible or stable. And so we're the components of physical fitness. You gotta know this. This is like first grade. Components of physical fitness. Flexibility. Flexibility is one. What else? Strength. What else?
Muscular.
Endurance.
Yep.
What else? One more.
Isn't it body composition? Is
Body
that?
count? Yeah, body count. Okay. So those are the components of physical fitness, right? We've talked a little bit about strength, endurance, and body count. What about flexibility? I was thinking about flexibility yesterday. Poor flexibility. You ever heard of Cinderella? Who was Cinderella?
She was the person who slept in the cinder in the attic.
In the attic? In the cinders? They called her Cinderella. And she had a couple stepsisters. Were they nice to her? No, they were mean to her. What about her stepmother? Nope. And so they were mean to Cinderella. And they called her Cinderella because of cinders. So she's under cold and nasty and had to cook for the family. And the family didn't like Cinderella. So Cinderella, they have the prince has come, and the prince wants to pick a wife. And so he's going around, and they're going to have this big dance, and they're all getting ready to go to the dance. And the Cinderella stepsister said, "You're not going, man. You don't have a chance. Look at you, old nasty Cinderella. Nobody's going to want to marry you." And so they all go to the dance, and then Cinderella's feelings are really hurt. And then she has this fairy godmother that pops out, and hey, Cinderella, fix her up, looking nice. Cinderella looks really good. But she can only look good till midnight, and then she turns back into her old self. And so she goes, and she has these pretty glass slippers, and she runs. And at midnight, she changes back, and she runs off. And the prince only has one glass slipper. And then he goes and starts looking all through the town and tries to fit that glass slipper on Cinderella's stepsisters. It doesn't fit them, and then they say, "Why are you trying that slipper on Cinderella?" And it fits like a glove. And so Cinderella moves up above the rest of the family, right? And so flexibility is the Cinderella of fitness. Why'd I say that? It gets no respect. It gets no respect from strength and endurance and body composition, and it's amazing it's even listed as one of the components of fitness. Strength has a big lobbying group from all the weightlifting people, right? Aerobic cardiovascular fitness should be up there. Cardiovascular fitness has a big lobbying group from doctors and everybody, right? Okay. Body comp, if we get too fat, that's a risk factor, right? So that's it's got a big support group. Who supports flexibility? Maybe some yoga people, some PTs, maybe. Okay. But it doesn't get a lot of recognition, right? In Alabama, it is against the law to teach yoga in the schools in Alabama. Against the law. How many of y'all, as parents, have a college degree? Raise your hand. Okay, a good number, right? I was the first one in my family to graduate from college, and so my parents didn't have a formal education, and so all my brothers, I got 2 brothers, we went to college, and so then I made sure my kids went to college, and then they're making sure their kids go to college because we value education, right? But Alabama historically has been a very uneducated state. Poor, uneducated. It's changing because you're getting a degree, right? You're smart, you're getting a degree, some of your parents have degrees, and you value education. But we've got so many morons in Alabama that don't value education, they don't think it's important, they don't believe in it, and we can't even get yoga taught in the public schools in Alabama because they think it's some type of Satan type of chanting and meditating. It's a religion. It has nothing to do with that, right? You've been to yoga. I did it for 4 years. I didn't chant a single time. I didn't pray a single time. I didn't do anything weird. I just stretched, right? And so that's how far backwards we are in this particular state. The good thing is, your generation is getting education, and hopefully you'll vote all these fools out and get some smart people in there that have some sense.
Or at the very least, because yoga is from a religion, although we have Christianity and such.
Yeah.
But like, could they not say we're going to do stretching classes too?
Well, they'd have to lie about it. Yeah. We're going to stretch today instead of yoga. Then they pull out a yoga routine and follow it. So.
I guess, or you could. I don't know. I feel like there are ways because not every stretch is yoga. There's a lot of overlap.
You can get around it if you want to.
I feel like there could be better marketing, I suppose.
But the kids can't go home. Hey, we did yoga and PE today. It's like, oh, yoga, that's against the law, man. So I'm trying to brainwash you in school. And so it's really sad, really sad. Okay, and flexibility is one of the benefits of yoga, right? And so and just think, where would you be with strength, with no flexibility? You'd be awful, right? Where would you be with endurance, with no flexibility? Where would you be with body comp? Okay. If you're too overweight, you don't have, your flexibility goes down because you've got fat that gets in the way, and you can't bend as much there. And so flexibility is important. And it's not a risk factor, right? Body comp's a risk factor, cardio's a risk factor, some of these others are risk factors, but it doesn't make the risk factor list. And so it's sort of left out, and eventually over time, it'll be thought of more highly than it is now. Okay, and so. With smart people like you'll go to PT school, you'll say, hey, you need to stretch, you need to do flexibility. If you're a coach, we need to stretch, we need to do flexibility exercises for performance and so forth. So hopefully things will change as people get educated, and that's important. Okay. What is the most common assessment that they use in your book related to measuring flexibility? Sit and reach, right? Okay, so the sit and reach. All of you've done it, I would believe. Okay, so you have a box. And somebody put their feet here, here. And the person, and reach and see how far they can reach, right? And so flexibility is a measure of range of motion at a group of joints. Now, how many joints does the sit and reach measure? mainly hamstring. Okay. Measures hip flexion, maybe mostly hamstrings. How did it come about? What's the leading orthopedic injury? Back injuries, right? Most people have a back injury sometime in their life or whatever. So, and so they say, oh yeah, let's do the sit and reach. It measures back flexibility. It doesn't measure back flexibility. Okay. It was designed to do that, or thought to do that, but it doesn't do that. Okay. And so you got the box. You sit. Take your fingers. You can go down, and you see how far you can reach. And there's a yardstick or measure right here. It should be 26 centimeters based upon what test you do. Okay, so you bend forward and they give you 2 or 3 things, and then you see how far that you can go forward, and then they measure that, and then they give you a number, and then on that number you can look in terms of how you perform based upon how other people perform. One problem is, if you ever give this test, make sure you look where the foot line is, because all sit and reach boxes don't have 26 centimeters right here. So if I go to 32 centimeters, I've stretched 6 and 8 centimeters, right? So some of them may have 18 inches here instead of 26 centimeters or something like that. But if you give the test and you look at norms, make sure that the feet are at the right spot in terms of the yardstick. If not, you're going to have to adjust your numbers there. So you bend forward, and if you warm up before you do the test, and stretch before you do the test, you'll do better on the test, right? And so I'd recommend that you warm up if you want to do good. That's the only, if I had to do y'all's fitness test, and I've done it, that's the only one that I don't do good on, and so I need some work on that one. If I had to pass it to graduate, I'd be stretching every day, man. Stretch, and eventually would pass it. But some people have more flexibility than others. Okay, so sit and reach is a predictor of flexibility only in pretty much the hamstrings. So it's not an overall measure of flexibility. You can have good flexibility or bad flexibility in your shoulders, your arms, your neck, or wherever, hands or whatever, and the sit and reach isn't going to tell you anything about that. Okay, and so it's sort of a token test that we use there. And remember, back problems are the major issues, and so they're trying to look at back flexibility, but it really doesn't do a good job of back flexibility there. It doesn't assess that very well. It does a little lower back and hamstring, but mostly hamstring. And when you do it, make sure if you're going to do it the head up or the head down, or how you're going to do it, you're not supposed to bounce and so forth, so that can cause some problem. Is it a good predictor of overall fitness? No. So why do we use it? What's that?
It's like the best thing you have, just to measure.
Very good.
the population.
We don't have anything any better. So if you can invent something better, we'll do it. Okay. So think about it. Think of inventing another test that measures flexibility that you can use. It's easy to do. A lot of the tests that we use aren't great tests, but we don't have anything any better, right? Like pull-ups in terms of upper body strength. It's not a great test. Some people can't do a single pull-up. Do they not have any strength? They have strength, but it doesn't capture it with a pull-up, right? And so we use it because we don't have a lot better in terms of assessments in order to measure that. Who tends to have better flexibility, males or females? Females. Okay, so females tend to have better flexibility. When are you the most flexible in your life? When you're a child? When you have a baby. So why is that?
I don't know, I don't feel very flexible.
You will be more flexible.
Because of hormones.
Hormones
Yeah,
are
the
released
progesterone
because the
and
hormones are
relaxin.
trying to help what?
Relax.
Yeah, and so there's a hormone called relaxin, and so it helps the female relax so the baby can be born. Okay, and so it's pretty interesting there. Okay, and so flexibility is a measure of orthopedic health. It may not be constant on both sides of the body, and so one side of the body may be more flexible than another side of the body, right? Okay, and you'll see that, and then like everybody take one arm behind you and see if you can put your hands together. Can you touch? I used to could touch. It's way far apart now. One over, one under. When I taught pulmonary rehab, we did that every day with our patients, and I could do it pretty good. Yeah. And I did the other side.
I can do it, but it's not as good.
Okay, what do you notice about one side versus another side? You may be more flexible on what? One side versus another? Okay, and so what do you need to do?
Stretch that side.
Work on the other side, right? And so yeah, you need to do that. Good posture helps with flexibility too. And so I've got a rotator cuff injury. We went to the doctor last week. They're working on it, and so they said I need to work on my posture because that helps what? Rotator cuff in terms of getting it more flexible there. So it's not consistent. The strength is not always consistent on both sides of the body either there. So what's the device used that measures flexibility? Round thing like this. Got an arm that comes out. It's got like degrees. What's that called? Goniometer, right? What did we call it in school when we did geometry?
Protractor.
Protractor. So goniometer, protractor. And so they'll take that and they'll put it on the joint and they'll find the right spot, and then you bend or stretch, and then you measure the range of motion of that particular joint there. So PTs will do goniometer flexibility assessments on folks. What's another tool that they use? Okay, so what does anklemometer do? Okay, what you can do with it is you take it, for example, if I want to do your back range of motion, I'd take it and put it on your back, then I'd bend over, and it looks at how far you bend, okay, in terms of the incline, right? And measures flexibility that way, okay? And so the goniometer wouldn't fit on your back like that, but you put it there, and then you bend forward, and it measures the angle or degrees of range of motion there, okay? So those are two common. They're cheap. You can get them for almost nothing. You can look at range of motion, and then we have norms that you can look at in your textbook, and the norms will show you how well you do in terms of males, females, so forth, in terms of range of motion there. There's some kind of functional movement screen. What is that? Any of you PT people do functional movement screens? Okay, because you're looking at the whole body, right? There's like 7 different tests that you give. You look at the function of the body because, for example, in some occupations, you need to have good flexibility, right? And so you know, if you're a firefighter and you got to climb in a hole and you got to bend around a curve or you got to reach or something or whatever, you need good flexibility to do that. So functional movement screen will look at the whole body, assess the whole body in terms of how well the body does from a functional standpoint in order to do something, to do a job, in order for the person to function there. Now, we have different types of flexibility exercises. Okay, everybody stand up. I want you to pick one part of your body and do a static stretch. Okay, so what are you doing? Take it and what?
Holding it.
Hold it, and then what do you do? Then it releases. Okay. Now do a dynamic stretch. Okay. Now do a P and F stretch.
Need a partner.
Mm-hmm. So do a P and F stretch. Okay. So a lot of you aren't familiar with that, but okay, show us a P and F stretch. Soccer guys, huh? Huh?
We did that.
Y'all do that? Okay, so and then a passive stretch. What's a passive stretch?
Like someone stretches for you.
Somebody takes and stretches your arm for you, right? Okay, so we have different types of stretches there. So we have static stretches. You bend it, hold, and I recommend you hold for how long? About 15 seconds, right? And then, how far do you stretch down? Until you feel what? Pressure, right? So resistance. And so if it starts to hurt, what do? Release it, right? What's reciprocal innervation? Okay. If you're going to stretch the bicep, the tricep has to do what? Relax, right? What if the tricep doesn't relax? You can't stretch, right? Or cramps, right? And so, as one body part moves, the other part has to do what?
Relax.
Relax, right? And so it has to be coordinated effort. And so what if both of them contract at one time?
Lock up. Can't move.
You don't go anyplace, right? And so that really decreases your flexibility, and that can really decrease your performance there. So what if you do a static stretch real quick? What does that do? What does that activate? What's that? No.
Is it the myostatic reflex?
There you go. You're close. Myostatic. It activates the muscle spindles, right? So the muscle spindles are receptors, right? And they say, and you go do it fast, and let's say you're running and you start to turn your ankle. All of a sudden you do what?
Overcorrect.
You overcorrect it, you've got to come back, you got to get your ankle back in place. Otherwise you're going to have a turned ankle, right? And a sprained ankle. And so if we do some kind of stretch really quick, that decreases the range of motion that you're able to do the stretch, right? So that's why they say when you go and stretch, you need to do the stretch what? The static stretch. You need to do it what? Slowly, right? Till you feel pressure or whatever, and then come back. And most of the things in fitness we say about 15 seconds, 3 or 4 repetitions there, 15 seconds. Yeah. Reciprocal innervation. Reciprocal innervation. And it's a coordination between one contracts and the other relaxes. So one contracts, it's like if you're going to do a bench press and you grip that bar so tight and you're going to strain. If you tighten all those muscles, it decreases your flexibility and it decreases your strength. Any of y'all golfers? Okay. They'll tell you when you learn to play golf, grip the club as lightly as you can. Grip it like if you're gripping a little bird in your hands. So why do they say grip it so lightly? Because you have more what?
Range of motion.
Flexibility, right? If I grip it tight, I can't hit it very far. The longer the range of motion, the more you can stretch and hit the golf ball further. So here, real light. Here, no good. Okay? So that's why reciprocal innervation, that's why mechanically, if you're a softball player or whatever, stretch, hit, like volleyball, stretch, hit, right? And so you activate that stretch reflex there. When you stretch, you're able to recruit more muscle fibers to do what? To come back, right? And so that's why it's important to make sure you've got a good range of motion. So if we stretch too fast, that causes the muscle spindles to contract and decreases our range of motion. Now, I was taught this, but I don't know how true it is. If you stretch too fast on the back, you're going to hurt your back or whatever. Maybe, but the body does a good job trying to protect any major damage or injuries if you stretch really quick or whatever. But, we said 15 seconds or whatever for each body part or whatever. The PTs or whatever, they may stretch them for like a minute or 2 minutes or whatever. So they may stretch people for a lot longer than what we do for fitness because they're trying to do some type of rehab. Does flexibility prevent injuries?
Yes.
Prove it. If we went to court, you would lose. Why?
There's not like enough research to.
It's hard to research. If I did a good research project, I'd take half of you in no flexibility program, another half flexibility program, then try to injure all of you and see which ones get the most injuries. So you can't. It's hard to test. Now, from common sense wise, we think that, you need to be flexible to prevent injuries. Common sense tells us that, right? The research is so hard to do, it's hard to show. We can do case studies, like with one person or 2 people or whatever, but from a big standpoint of a lot of people, in terms of injuries and stuff, it's really hard to do injury research. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
From a control standpoint. And so, because we can't try to injure people and see if they get injured or not, and so forth. So it's hard to do that type of research. How much flexibility do you need? Depends on what you're trying to do, right? Remember, the opposite of flexibility is what?
Stability.
Okay, and so if you're a 300-pound lineman, you don't need to have the flexibility of a gymnast, right? And so how much do you need? Depends on what you're trying to do. One thing, sumo wrestlers they can do splits and stuff. They train all day long every day, so they're big and huge. But but they're different than football players. But how much do you need? We don't know. It just depends. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish there. But there's some healthy numbers and healthy ranges in terms of flexibility there. So we have static flexibility, and then we have dynamic flexibility, and that would where you do what? Bounce, right? And so, and they recommend against dynamic flexibility, or some would recommend against that, because if you bounce, that activates that myostatic reflex, right? And so that you're not bending as far if you bounce, right? And so that's one reason they don't recommend that. And then another reason is because maybe you could pull something or whatever. But I have never seen anybody pull anything. But they, in the literature, that's what they say. So you got static, and then you got dynamic, right? And then you have P and F. P and F exercises. Okay? And so what does P and F stand for? Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. 3 big words, right? Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Who knows where it was invented? It was invented at the Kabbat Kaiser Institute in Israel. I bet the PTs y'all work with don't know that, right? I know because I'm a researcher, and so I had to look where it started. And so what they were doing, and they had people injured or killed, or not killed, but injured or in bad shape during the war, and they were trying to get them back more flexible. And sometimes they really couldn't stretch themselves and so forth, so they're trying to get them back in terms of flexibility there. Okay, so P and F exercises activate the Golgi tendon organ, like you said. Okay, so come here. I'll use you to demonstrate on since you're right here. Okay, sit on the floor. Okay, face that way. Okay, so she's sitting on the floor. Do like you're going to do a sit and reach. And see how far you can stretch. Okay, so she goes that far. Okay, everybody see? Y'all stand up so you can see. Everybody stand up and see. This is church. Stand up. Okay. She's going to go down and stretch. And that's how far she can stretch, right? Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I'm going to stand behind her and she can go ahead and stretch. I want you to push back against me as hard as you can. Ready? Go. Okay, relax. Now stretch. See how much further she stretched? Mm-hmm. So why did she stretch further? Because the Golgi tendon organ made those muscles do what? Relax, right? Because she's pushing back and creating force, and that caused the muscles to relax, and then she was able to do what?
Go farther.
Stretch further. We'll do it again. Stretch. How far you can go. Okay, now push back. Push. Now go. Okay, so if you want to pass the fitness test, do what?
P and F stretches.
Enough stretches. It works. It's a miracle, right? I just did a miracle, right? I increased her flexibility 3 inches in 30 seconds. I'm not even going to charge her or anything, right?
Appreciate it.
Okay, and so now P and F, your coaches do that with y'all? P and F? Okay. And so some coaches do P and F exercises. One thing is you've got to have a partner. Okay, and so you've got to have somebody that can. Some people you can't even hold, and they just push you back. So you have to be stronger than your partner to hold them there. And you can do it with every body part. And so here, just put your arm on. So here she can push. Well, let me see. Push backwards. Okay, and then relax, and then she can go back further. Okay. And so you can do arms, legs, back, hips, whatever you want to do. And there's a whole series of PNF exercises. You can go to a book, and there's different types of PNF in terms of relax and non-relax, and different things there with isometric contractions and so forth. So PNF was done in hospitals and places like that to try to rehab clinics to get people more flexible. When Coach Brown was at the University of Alabama, we did PNF exercises with all the football team and had them do that. Now, on a football team, you have some sort of nuts that are crazy people, and like when I was trying to hold her, they'd be trying to push on the person or taking their ankle and twisting it and so forth like that. So you got to make sure that your partner is what? And knows how to do what they're supposed to do, because they start pulling and pushing on you and don't do the right stuff. They're not doing what they need to be doing there. Okay, and so, but yeah, it's a great way to increase flexibility. It's a good way. The disadvantage is you've got to have a partner. It takes a little bit more time and so forth. And then, what does kind of stretching the soccer players do? What do y'all do when you run around the field? Get the knees up, kick the heels up. And so they're moving the whole time, right? And they're also doing what? They run around and so forth, right? And so I really like that kind of stretching, because you're able to warm the body up, right? Plus, you're moving, right? And plus, you're stretching the muscles that you use in your sport, right? And so we could go around the room and we could say, everybody kick the heels up, kick up, everybody brings your knees up to your chin, everybody jump, everybody do. Y'all do all kinds of, about 10, 15 different things, right? Okay, in a circle or whatever you're doing, and you're warming up when you do that. And that's good, because you're not only doing flexibility, but you're also warming the muscles up, getting ready to participate in a event there. And you don't have to worry about decrease in force output and those kinds of things. So it's a good way. It's a good way to warm up dynamically. And the first research I did years ago, and it was a flexibility project, and I had people warm up and see if warming the muscle increased the range of motion. That was my study. So I want to know if you warm the muscle and increase range of motion. And because the research literature at that time said you should warm the muscle up before you stretched. Okay? It was based on a clinical model. And what they did is they took a muscle out of I think it was a dog. They took a muscle out, and then they put like a little flame right here, give you the muscle, and then they had a thing, and it would pull the muscle and see if it stretched further. But when you warm the muscle, it also stretched the muscle further. Okay, that was in a dog muscle in a clinic. Okay, and so my question was, okay, if we take a group like you and we run you around the field and warm your muscle up, can you stretch further? So I did pre and post testing to see if you changed flexibility. Now, there's a big difference between putting flame under a muscle and warming it up and warming the muscle up when you're out exercising. Okay. So one question was, how much did I warm the muscle up? Well, I don't know. The only way I could tell if I took a thermometer and stuck it in there and see what temperature it was, right? I couldn't do that, right? And so that was a problem with that kind of research. And then we did a bunch of different exercises, and I found some muscles did better and stretched more than some didn't stretch quite as well. It may be related to the warm up of those specific muscles instead of the overall body. And then it's hard to measure, how much they warmed up or how much they didn't warm up. So what they were saying was, you warm up the muscle and it stretches further. Warm it up, it stretches further. Then you take the muscle and you stretch it here, stretch it, and then cool it down. And we've got something called plastic stretch, elastic stretch. Okay, so an elastic stretch, we take it and stretch it, right? And then a plastic stretch, does it hold the stretch or not? Does it stay stretched or does it go back to what it was? And so what they found is if you take a muscle and warm it up and stretch it, then you put ice on it, it tends to maintain a longer length. So you can take a muscle, if I was in a clinic or whatever, I could take it and stretch it, and then put ice on it, and that helps it do what?
Maintain the length.
Maintain that length there,
Yeah.
okay? And so that's what the literature said, okay? And so a different kind of stretches there. Now, there's a bunch of research out there. I'm going to make a copy of this and put it on Blackboard. Flexibility exercises and performance by the American College of Sports Medicine. What they're seeing now, or what the research is showing is, let's say you're going to do a bench press. And you're going to do a 1 rep max on the bench press. And you stretch that muscle before you do the bench press, it decreases your 1 rep max about 8%. Decreases your performance. Okay. Now, researchers, you have to be careful with research. Okay? And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about research. All of you are going to get a degree in exercise science or something like that, right? So you will be a what? Scientist, right? You're not in a lab looking through a microscope, but you're still what? A scientist, right? Okay, I'm a scientist. Okay? And so, and we do, scientists always want to know what?
How something works.
Yeah, we want to know the answers. We have a lot of questions that we want to know the answers to. Okay? And so, there's something here. I'd go through a lot of steps, right? Should come up in a second. Maybe not. Never rely on computers. Okay, yeah.
When you say stretching will actually decrease your like one rep max,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to warm up before you exercise, and warming up would technically be a stretch, now would it be a stretch and hold, but you're flexing and extending that muscle, that would be, still be considered.
Well, they recommend the stretching not be the warm up. You warm up doing something else
Well, then how
besides
would you warm
stretching.
up like like a specific muscle group without stretching that specific muscle group?
Well, do a lighter weight. Do like a real light weight, maybe 10, 15 times, then get a heavier weight, then warm up like that. Instead of doing a stretching kind of warm up.
But even still, with that light weight, you'd be stretching that muscle, but you could, with
Well-
that bench press, you're coming down, that's.
Yeah, but you're just going through the range of motion of the activity. You're not really doing like a stretching kind of thing with that particular activity there. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with that computer. Okay, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about research. And so, do y'all ever get anything in your curriculum about how to do research? Okay, you should. Okay, you should have a research class. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about research. So, as a researcher, you have a question, right? And you want to find the answer to the question, right? Like Archimedes wanted to find the answer to the king's crown, right? And so you want to find the answer there. So, you have a question, and then with a question, for example, let's use an example. If you take creatine, it does increase muscle size. Okay. So what I would do is I'd start looking at creatine, right? And I want to review the research on creatine and see what other people have found and see if they found that it increased muscle size or whatever. And so I'd study it, right? Okay. And so I have a question. And so does creatine increase muscle size? All right. And then I look and see what other people have done, what other people have found. And some people may have found it does, and some people may have found that it doesn't, right? So I come up with a hypothesis, and they come up with a null hypothesis. There's no significant difference in muscle size with a group of people that take creatine versus a group that doesn't take creatine, right? And so that would be a null hypothesis. I'm not saying that either group is better than the other, because as a researcher, you're not supposed to be biased. And so what does biased mean? Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't have a favorite now. I'm not getting paid by the creatine people to do this study. I just want to know if it increases muscle size or not. It's like, okay, the cigarettes cause lung cancer. Okay, you know, the people that sell tobacco, they come up with studies and say, oh yeah, it doesn't cause lung cancer. And then all the other studies with scientists say, oh yeah, it does. And so you're going to get research that'll say what? Differences, right? And so there'll be differences in the research. So one research project doesn't tell you the answer, right? You need to do lots and lots of studies there. And so I've got my question, and then I've got to come up with a research design that's not biased, right? And so, am I going to be able to take 1 million people and look at creatine, half of them on creatine, half not on creatine, and see if there's changes in muscle size? No, I can't come up with 1 million people. And so it's like with the vaccine. It's like, okay, they can't come up with like millions of people to do this test on, right? They have to have a certain group that they're able to study, because they've got to be able to do what? You got to be able to control the group, right? Because there may be a bunch of other factors that can affect the results of their particular study there, right? Okay. So I take a group. It could be like women soccer players, okay? It could be women. It could be men. It could be old people. It could be people with heart disease. It could be people, it could be kids, but they wouldn't let you do that with kids. But you know, there's all these different groups, and then I do my study, and then I say, okay, I did the study, and I found that creatine increased muscle size in female soccer players. Okay. Somebody else does another study, they find it doesn't. Okay. So who's right? Well, maybe there's something different about the soccer players I studied. Maybe I did English players, so maybe somebody else did Brazilian players or whatever. Maybe there's something about English versus Brazilian. Okay? And so maybe I only had like 20 subjects. Well, in 20 subjects, that's a really small group, right? In order to be significant, I may need like 100 subjects or whatever to do that, right? So I'll come up with the answers of the study, and then I'll either accept or reject my hypothesis. Okay? If I say there is no difference, and there really isn't a difference, I'm right? What if I say there is a difference with my study, but in reality there is no difference? I've made an error, right? In research they call it a type 1 error. My research told me this, but that's not reality. There's a difference between reality and the results of a research study, oftentimes, right? And so you can look at any research that you want to look at, and you'll come up with all different types of answers. Some studies will say, hey, running can kill you. Well, there may be some problems with their study, right? And then some other studies will say, hey, it does all these great things, right? And so in anything you look at, there's going to be studies or pro and con. So how do you make a decision? Well, you look at the design of the study, right? And how it was done, and who it was done with, and how they did the measurements and so forth. So if I did a study looking at cardiovascular fitness, and I used the mile run as my fitness test, the people that reviewed it, my other fellow scientists who reviewed it, will say, we're going to reject this study because you didn't use a good test of cardiovascular fitness, right? Okay. And so maybe there was something special about the group of people you did your study on, right? that can affect the results of the study. Or maybe it was cold one day and warm another day when I did the study, and maybe the environment could affect the results of the study. So whenever we review research studies, and I review them from all over the world, I spend a lot of time every week reviewing other people's research in order for it to go to the journal, in order to get it published. Now, there's all kind of levels of journals, lots of different levels. Now, if I spend like a year doing a study and I try to get it published and I send it to the Journal of Medicine, Science, Sport, and Exercise, and then they reject it, and everybody gets rejected. Okay. And they reject it, what am I going to do? I'm just going to say, forget it?
Try and publish it and what's in it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to go to another journal. Okay, maybe I try to go to some lesser well-known journal. There's all these predatory journals out there now, and so they'll publish anything as long as you pay them to publish it. And so they'll say, okay, Alex, you did this study on AUM soccer players, and you sent us $1,000, and we're going to put it in our journal. Okay? And so you can get anything published. It didn't used to be that way, but that's the way it is now. And so you have to be very, very careful with what you look at and what you read related to research. And so now the big dog journals are really particular, and they're going to reject. They reject about 80% of the articles that are sent to them. Okay, and so they say something wrong with this. You didn't use the right statistics. You didn't use the right testing method. Your study was too short. You didn't have enough subjects, and so forth. So they'll look at all those different kind of things there. And then some others, I get invited to speak on stuff I've never even heard of. They'll say, come to this conference, pay your money, and you can speak. Well, I don't know anything about delivering babies. Okay, you can come to the Deliver Baby Conference and speak if you want to pay your money. And so, obviously, that's garbage, right? In a lot of these foreign countries and stuff, they have a lot of fraud and stuff in their research and stuff. So be very, very careful in terms of what you read and who you listen to, right? You need to be educated. As a scientist, you should be what? A skeptic, right? And make decisions based upon what? Good science, right? Good science. Be smart. Be smart. There's now, if you go on I had my vaccine last week, so I was glad to get it. And so, but there'll be people that saying, well, it's going to change my DNA. Really? How? There's no way. They can track you for the rest of your life because you got that vaccine in your arm. How are they going to track me? Huh? What does the science say? Can they track me? I don't think so. There have been a couple people died. Okay, they blame it on the vaccine. Okay, well, a lot of people die sleeping every night. Should you not sleep? A lot of people die of heart attacks after they've eaten. Should you not eat? I don't know. So you got to use your what? Your brain, right? To do what? Make good decisions. Good decisions. Now, if we're looking at flexibility and decreases power output, what do we want to know? How long did they stretch before they did that 1 rep max, right? Okay, what kind of athlete were they, right? What kind of stretching did they do, right? And so there's some studies, and when you read this article, you'll look at what some of the studies have shown, but there's very few studies. So should you give up stretching?
No.
based on a few studies. You should study it more, right? And investigate it and see what do you think, right? Now, if I was going to the powerlifting contest at, in Birmingham, Alabama, and I read some stuff about stretch and decreased my 1 rep max in the squat or whatever, I would sort of want to look at that, right? And investigate it and see what happened there, okay? And so some of the literature is saying, well, if you do real short stretches, it doesn't affect it. Some of them are saying other kinds of things about stretching. And so there may be something to that, but there may not be anything to it. It may be just what? Bad research, right? It may just be what these people found, and it may not be 100% accurate. That's like when we talked about strength. Like when we did the isometric, it had the bars that you pushed on and pulled on, and they said, hey, that really increases strength. That's the best way to train. Well, it's at that time, that's what that research study showed. But is that great research? No. So as a scientist, you need to do what? You need to investigate and read and study. Don't believe what somebody with an 8th grade education tells you, that knows nothing about the science of whatever you're trying to look at or investigate. Use the best scientific information that's available there. Now, if someone's pregnant and they're trying to figure out whether to take the vaccine or not, we don't know, right? Because there's been no research based on women who are pregnant, right? And so you have to make a decision for yourself. You think, okay, if I'm pregnant, is this going to affect the pregnancy, right? We don't know. Okay. But in 65-year-old males, it's had a great impact on preventing death and ventilators and all that other kind of stuff. So that's different, right? Because we have what? Research, we have data in order for you to do what? Make good what? Decisions. And so you make good decisions as a scientist based on what?
Good research.
Good research. Now, why do a lot of African Americans not want to take the corona vaccine? Dash, what do you think? You don't know. Who knows? Yeah, I showed you in class, right? The Tuskegee study.
A few in the past.
Yeah, because blacks have been mistreated, they've been abused, and many are not educated, right? And so they don't trust it, right? And you can't blame them, right? Because the history there shows what? You don't trust these folks, right? They're something's not right there. Okay, but we're seeing a lot more African Americans die from the virus, right? And so forth. And so there, we've got to figure out how to get to people, educate people, and give them good information where they can make good decisions, right? It's like a study we did in West Alabama with poor people that had high blood pressure. They wouldn't take the medication. We even, with public health, we even paid them to take the medication. Money, here's money, take this. They still wouldn't take it. They wouldn't take it for their high blood pressure. Huh? Yeah, they take the money, but they wouldn't take the money. But we found a way to motivate them. What do you think we did? We went to the churches and got the preachers to preach, you need to take this medication. And they listened to the preachers because they do what?
They could trust.
They trusted the preachers, right? They didn't trust the scientists, they trusted the preachers. And so the preachers were able to help get people taking the blood pressure medication, get their blood pressures down there. So as a scientist, we want to educate people, right? And we want to do the best thing, right? There's always going to be outliers. What's an outlier?
Out of the normal.
Something's going to happen. If you give this to like so many thousand people, somebody's going to have some issues with it, right? In terms of an outlier. There's always outliers. You can put 100 people on a weight training program and 99 get stronger and one person just doesn't get stronger. And we call that an outlier. Okay. And so what do you do with the outlier in your study? You worry about it or you get rid of them. And so take them out. But there's always maybe there's something really different about that person, really different about their chemistry, really different about something about that particular person that they behaved in a certain way or reacted in a certain way to whatever you're going to do with them. So what I'm really trying to tell you is, flexibility exercises in performance, they've shown that flexibility has decreased performance on certain occasions, and talking about performance of athletes, right? And it would be, for you, maybe if you did a big static stretching thing before you played volleyball, it could maybe decrease your power output a little bit or your vertical jump a little bit. It could possibly do that because if we look at the muscle here, this modern technology just doesn't work, right? When I had chalk, I never had a problem. Markers don't do work on flip. The computer doesn't work, the marker doesn't work. It's like, okay, give me my old stuff. Okay. So here's a muscle, it's like a spring, right? And we're springs, right? So we jump, our muscles act as springs. Now, what if you stretch the spring?
You've already released it.
Okay, if we stretch the spring, it doesn't have as much bounce to it, right? Okay, and so that's the principle there. And so in terms of how flexibility can decrease performance like a vertical jump or a 1 rep max power output kind of thing. And so the sports like soccer, you're not doing a 1 rep max, right? And so flexibility is completely different there than would it be in maybe volleyball or maybe hitting a softball could affect it there, but it may or may not. Okay. So read and study and think, and then do some research and figure all that out, and then you'll get published, right? In a nice journal. Let's look at ACSM guidelines for flexibility. So here's the guidelines. At least 2 to 3 days per week will provide the greatest gains. So what about 1 day a week? Probably what? Not that good, right? Because research shows what? 2 to 3 days per week. Stretch after activity, physical activity or passively moist heat packs or warm the muscle. So it says stretch after the activity. Okay? And so warm the muscle up by what? Maybe running or jogging or doing something like that, and then stretch when? So here the stretch is not the what?
Warm up.
It's not the warm up, right? So the stretch is not the warm up. Stretch intensity should result in feeling of tightness or slight discomfort. So we bend or stretch till what? Yeah, a little discomfort, we feel it, we stretch or whatever. I don't have to stretch far to get that, okay. Each major joint area should be included: shoulder, chest, neck, trunk, lower back, hips, legs, ankles. So like weightlifting, you know, the major muscles there. Stretch methods may include static, dynamic, or ballistic, or P&F. So we've got static, dynamic, ballistic, or P&F. So you could do the soccer run around the field stretch, right? So there's different stretches that you could do. Static stretches should be held for 10 to 30 seconds. All the older adults have greater benefits when static stretches are held for 30 to 60 seconds. Okay? And so P&F stretching should include 3 to 6 seconds of contraction followed by 10 to 30 seconds of assisted stretching there. So you take it and hold for 3 to 6 seconds, and then you push back for 10 to 30 seconds, and then you stretch again for the P&F exercises there. Complete 60 seconds of total stretching for each exercise by means of repetition of exercises 2 to 4 times. So we do it 2 to 4 times, 2 to 3 days per week, 10 to 30 seconds per time. And so those are the American College of Sports Medicine guidelines for flexibility there. So if you're the personal trainer, when are you gonna have them stretch? After, right? Okay. And so you need to have them stretch. For changes in flexibility. Okay. And so, if you're a golfer or something like that, you warm it up and you really stretching during the warm up too, right? And so it may be part of that, but you know, if you're looking at functional kinds of things or competition kinds of things, that may be a little bit different there. If you ever been to track meet and the sprinters, what are they doing? They're stretching a lot, right? Yeah.
Are those guidelines on the chart like in the textbook, or is it like a separate one?
Yeah, I will put this on. We'll put it on there for you when I get back. Okay, and it's got a bunch of different examples here of studies. It talks about studies are limited to the aspects that are selected for examination, what level over controls of the variables. And what that means is the studies vary a lot in terms of what groups they used, how they controlled the study, and what they did to the people, and so forth. So you get all kinds of different results with different studies. And so, you know, there's all kinds of different studies there. Okay. Here's one. Stretch-induced strength loss was observed after both static stretching and contact-relaxed stretching, although the greatest decrement was the contact-relaxed method. Well, I'm not going to read all that, but I'm going to let you look at this when I send it to you there. Okay, so what do they conclude? Flexibility exercises are recommended as part of a complete exercise program, along with cardiorespiratory exercise, resistance training, and neuromotor exercise training. Although chronic improvements in range of motion are possible with a regular stretching program, concerns have been raised related to the acute impact of stretching on subsequent strength and power performance. Although far from definitive, shifting stretching exercises from pre-activity to post-activity may be an option to consider, or including flexibility exercise as a standalone program to reap the benefits of chronic adaptations. And so your flexibility program could be just like your weightlifting program, right? Or your cardiovascular program. It could be what? A standalone program, right? Okay. So what about yoga? now we see yoga every place in terms of all the TV shows, the personal trainers, and all that kind of stuff. Have any of you had Professor Allegro as a teacher? Okay, she's like a yoga expert. She's been to India and studied yoga. She knows yoga. We went to this conference together, and we went and did yoga together. And so we did hot yoga. You know, I was a wrestling coach. I was used to hot, and so we'd always crank up the room in the wrestling room to be really, really hot and train. Well, we went in there and we did hot yoga. It was so hot you couldn't even breathe in the place. It was hot. And so people would get down on the floor because the heat would be up so high, and it was brutal in that room. So there's hot yoga, there's yoga for football players, basketball players. There's all kinds of yoga for all these special groups and special populations. And it really does help what? The flexibility, right? It also helps with balance, right? And it has lots and lots of good benefits. We did a study looking at yoga in terms of if it met the ACSM guidelines for aerobic activity. And so remember, it has to be moderate activity, 30 minutes of moderate activity per day in 5 days a week. And so in the study that we did, we found that yes, you could make a yoga class meet those particular guidelines if you did it a certain way, where you had them moving the whole time, right? You didn't just sit on the floor and sit in a position the whole time. You continue to do what? Move from what? One pose to the next pose, to the next pose, to the next pose, and that way you tend to burn more calories, and you also got what? Some aerobic activity. It's not a great aerobic activity, but you still got something out of it there. And so especially if you're in a low fitness category, you could do yoga, and that may be even moderate to vigorous for some people there. And in addition to balance and so forth, there's different kind of benefits that you can get from that. Any of you do yoga? You like it? Get good benefits? You do yoga?
No, I stretch though.
Stretch? Anybody have a really good stretching program they like? Are y'all treating yoga like Cinderella? Huh? Are you treating flexibility like Cinderella? You're not giving it any respect? You need to. Your body wants what? Help, right? And so, I think it's good. We had yoga up in the wellness center, and I'd walk by that room every day, and I was scared to go in there. I played wrestling, I did sports, I've been in the Army, and all this stuff. I was scared to go in the yoga room with all those women in there. And so I'm going to look like an idiot because I go in there with all those women, and one of them was 90-something years old. And they'd be able to do all these yoga poses, and, and I can't even touch my toes. And so I was intimidated. Okay, and so after I went in, I found that, hey, I'm not that bad. I'm not good, but I'm not that bad. And so I did it for like 3 or 4 years. And so then our instructor left, Juliet, and then they had changes there. So Dr. Schaefer and I, we would do it every morning after we got through running. It was really, really good. Personally, it's not research, but from an individual standpoint, I got a lot of good benefits from doing the stretching and yoga and stuff. And I'm suffering now because I didn't keep doing it. So I would recommend it. What about balance training? Can y'all balance? Everybody stand up. See how good you can balance. Up, 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 up. Okay, stand on one foot. how long you can stand on one foot without putting it down. You all right? Put your foot down. That's cheating. Huh? You got to work on your balance. Okay, y'all do pretty good on that side, right? Try the other side now. Any difference? Y'all got good balance? Okay. Yeah.
So why balancing on one leg so far and close your eyes?
What's that now?
If you, I was in physical therapy, like vestibular, a year and all.
Yeah.
They said if you balance on one leg and close your eyes, it makes it a lot harder. And it's true, so if you balance on one leg and close your eyes, why does it get harder?
Okay, try that. Close your eyes. Balance on one leg, close your eyes.
Something with a P, I can't remember.
Vestibular.
Vestibular, isn't it like the apparatus or something?
Vestibular apparatus. Yeah.
Or like if you took sound away, it would be harder as well, right?
Like vertigo. Y'all ever get any vertigo patients?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Vertigo's brutal, man. You get vertigo, you just fall out in the middle of the floor and just, ugh. It's awful. Awful. Stop. What time is it? 9 what?
28.
9:28. Okay, take out a piece of paper. Ask me some questions. You can learn anything. Okay, first question. Define flexibility. Define flexibility. Yeah, just write the answer. Define flexibility. On your paper. Everybody got that one? Number 2. What is the most common assessment of flexibility? Most common assessment of flexibility. Number 3. Is flexibility a good predictor of overall fitness? Is flexibility a good predictor of overall fitness? Yes or no? Number 4. List 4 factors that determine how flexible a muscle is. 4 factors that determine how flexible a muscle is, or joint is. Huh? 4 factors that determine how flexible a joint is. Make you think a little bit.
Like test or how to measure it or?
Just factors. Four factors that determine the flexibility of a joint. Flexibility or risk factor for cardiovascular health. It's flexibility or risk factor for cardiovascular health. Number 11. List three different types of flexibility. There you go. be careful about that. Okay, what page are the norms on in your book? Yeah, right there.
116.
Look at 116. Okay, and so if we're doing the sit and reach test, and you're a male or female, and you stretch so far, is that good or bad? Well, we have to look and see, but if the sit and reach box is not set up right, or the starting point is different for your feet, it's going to give you what? Different results, right? And so you have to be careful with that because it's not all standard. And this is what they call the Canadian test, and so it may not be the same as some other sit and reach tests. There's a lot of different sit and reach tests.
Yeah, it says that their 0 point is set at 26.
Yeah. And so I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at the one y'all do for your fitness test in terms of what it's set at. But what if you don't have a sit and reach box? What can you do?
Use like a meter stick maybe, or.
Yeah, you can take you used to have yardsticks and stuff, and you could take it and tape it to the floor, and then they call that the V sit and reach. You can sit and see how far you can go on that. Or the first one I had, I built it, and so it's easy to build because I was in high school and I didn't have any equipment, so I had to build my own. So all you gotta do is you take like a box right here, a little board right here, but this is 0 point, and then you take the yardstick and measure, so many inches or whatever, and you can probably build it for maybe $10 or something like that. So cheap to build. Okay. Galloway. What's another name for a goniometer? Protractor. Okay. Always get compass and protractor mixed up. So you know what a compass is? What do you do with it? Draw circles?
That's direction, instead of compass. Yeah, it's like direction.
Yeah. So you have a compass and a protractor. Okay. Gamble. Functional movement screen. It's how many tests?
Say it one more time. I didn't hear the question.
Functional movement screen. Functional movement screen.
Functional, what is it?
How many tests does it have? How many different components?
Had like 3 or 4.
Seven.
That's it.
7 different tests. Your book lists all of them. The book takes up 2 or 3 pages of the chapter on functional movement screen. So when would you use a functional movement screen? If you want to look at the overall picture of somebody, right? And say, okay, overall, let me see how you do it in terms of your flexibility and so forth. Okay. Holmes. Is flexibility a metabolic risk factor? Huh? Metabolic risk factor? Flexibility? So what are your metabolic risk factors?
Diabetes.
Age, smoking, the whole 10 or 11 that we have, right? And so, it probably, that's one reason that flexibility doesn't get a lot of press. You usually don't die from lack of flexibility, right? And so from a metabolic standpoint, it doesn't get a lot of attention there. Okay. Number 11. Mosley. List different forms of flexibility. Mosley. There you are. Huh? Okay, so you get what? Static, right? Dynamic? EF? You could have passive, so forth. So all those are different forms, and they all have advantages and disadvantages. Okay? Yes. Mackenzie. Can static stretching decrease performance? Okay, possibly, right? It depends on what you're doing, right? Okay. Alec, because there's some potential flexibility decrease in performance, should you eliminate flexibility from your training program? Right? You should include it, right? But what should you do? Figure out what? The best way to do it, right? Figure out the best way to put flexibility in your training program. There. Okay. Phillips, when are you the most flexible in your life?
When you're having a baby.
What's the hormone that's released?
Well, there's two that I've been told. It's relaxin and progesterone helps with the relaxation of the muscles.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple hormones are relaxed there. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna see you after class.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? So put Cinderella to bed, right? You know, it's a shame we don't put more emphasis on flexibility. So, but it's just not that emphasis in our program. So we'll do the next chapter starting on Wednesday.